I'm going to say this. I think that we are very disciplined. My wife and myself, we are very disciplined. We run an organized house. And I do think that there are limitations to this. And so I'm trying to figure that out. But for us, we're regimented in our schedule, in the way we manage our clock.
Well, welcome to the True Man Podcast. You know, one of the great parts about having a podcast is that I get to meet amazing people and hear amazing stories. And I have grown to appreciate this format. And I bet today's guest has a similar feeling since he is a podcast host and works with other podcasters himself. So welcome to the podcast, Jonathan Rivera. Jonathan is an author, an entrepreneur, and host and creator of the Podcast Factory. Jonathan, welcome to the True Man Podcast.
Mike, I appreciate the warm welcome, but I do want to make sure that we start on the right foot. So I do not work with podcasters. I work with business people who want to add a podcast to their marketing mix.
You know what? I like that even better, and I can appreciate it as an entrepreneur turned podcaster. So there you go.
That's it, bro.
Jonathan. Yeah, I of course want to talk about podcasting because I do that quite a bit, but I'm sure you didn't wake up and one morning in sixth grade and go, "Hey, I want to be an entrepreneur, a podcaster, and all that fun stuff." So talk a little bit about how your journey has gone to get you where you're at today.
Well, what do you think? I mean, we can talk about all sorts of things. What do you think would be most relevant to the folks who are sitting down, taking time out of their day to listen to us so that we can zero in on that?
So Jonathan, I would think that, commonly on the podcast, I think people want to hear stories that they can relate to. Maybe it was a pivotal moment in your life or a comeback, so to speak, that you may have achieved. Is there a pivotal moment in your life that really got you, that changed your life, had a dramatic effect on you?
Man, there's all kinds of those moments, and I look forward to them, and I thank God for them now when they show up. I used to dread them. But I would say the biggest one is that got me from blue collar worker to entrepreneur was when my mom passed away, and it was sudden and unexpected, painful, and I was asking myself, "Is this it? This is all I'm meant to do?" I was an electrician 9 years, and I wasn't satisfied. And that was when I decided to jump into real estate, made a bunch of money, lost a bunch of money, and eventually rebuilt my real estate business and then started the company that I'm working at now with my life's mission at the Podcast Factory.
What was it during that period of time? So you said you were an electrician. So you're going through a period, and I think a lot of guys go through this where they ask themselves, "Oh, come on, man, there's got to be more to life than this." What was the trigger there? How did you get things turned around where you said, "I'm going to make a change and I'm going to do something different and I'm going to be a success in my life"? What was it exactly?
Well, I mean, obviously, big changes in life cause you to think about things. Yep. And I believe what separates successful people from average, ordinary people living lives of quiet desperation is a small little switch. And to give you an example, I was an electrician straight out of high school. I was an apprentice. I worked my way up as quickly as I could. I learned to read prints, run jobs, run crews. I had the truck. I was running the crew, everything. And most people, myself included at that time, would say, "This is it. I made it. Check it out. I got the van. I'm running the crew. I got the paycheck. I have all of that." And be happy with that. When my mom passed away, looked around, and what I saw was I was running guys older than me. They were unhappy, unhealthy, unfulfilled. And I said, well, that's what I have to look forward to. And I made a little switch. It's just a small little switch. Instead of the "this is it" cocky type of thinking, I switched the words around and turned it into a question. And I asked myself, is this it? And that's what I do all the time. When I hit another plateau, now I have to ask, is this it? And most times it's not. And that's how you keep growing.
How did you, was this just something that you came across, or was just something in your mind where you were able to flip that switch and say, is this it?
I don't know. I don't know exactly how.
Well,
I mean, it was just a
sometimes when we
change.
go through, yeah, sometimes when we go through stuff, there's a person there that's walking alongside us, and maybe they guide us, or, maybe there's some other source that you turn to. For example, like faith, was your faith journey, was that a part of your life at that point?
No, actually, at that time, I was just talking to my wife. I call her Cupcake. We were talking about this because we're applying to a new school, new community. They're a Christian community, and one of the questions that the director asked was, "What was your?" I don't know how she put it, but to sum it up, what was your like come to Jesus moment? And we were both talking, and we said, well, there's been multiples at different phases in our lives. And so, yeah, absolutely. My mom passed away. And that's one of those things where um, some people might get mad, like, God,
Yeah.
why did you do this? Why did you take her away from us so early? Or the other side is, God, what are you trying to teach me? What am I supposed to learn? So during that time, I went back to the church because I grew up Catholic. We were Sunday Catholics, and we just went to church like we were supposed to. We weren't that deep into
Yeah.
our faith, but as I grew up, I separated from faith a little bit. And then after mom passed, I came back, started going to church with dad, got my confirmation, and ever since have been growing in faith. But that was the first pivotal moment as an adult that brought me back into faith.
So what does your faith life look like now?
Man, what does it look like? Um, it looks like I've got a lot to learn. I'm very, very thirsty and hungry, and I am chasing wisdom every single day. Part of my morning routine is I hop out of bed, I put a pot of coffee on, and I hop over my spot and I do my rosary, do my devotionals, spend some time in the Word before I even talk to my family, before they even get up. Uh, we pray before all our meals. We pray at night. We practice gratitude. I'm still learning about humility and forgiveness, but the more I learn, the more I want. And so we're just getting more and more and more involved in our faith these days.
Yeah. And how does that transfer over to your business? I think I'm having conversation more and more with a lot of business owners because faith, for whatever reason, seems to be under attack these days. And so some people want to separate their business life from their personal life. And I just find that incredibly hard, if not impossible to do. And so I don't do it. But how do you coexist with your business and your professional life and your faith life?
There is no coexistence. It is.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the way it works. And I don't understand people who think they can segment those things. My faith informs my life and my life's purpose and my work and the way I show up to work for my team, the way I show up for my clients, the
Yeah.
way I show up in everything I do. So I don't see them as separate pieces. Faith is what powers the work that I do, and I'm on a mission. And my mission is quite simple: the right words from the right person at the right time can change a life. And knowing that we have that power, you and me, with this
Yeah.
conversation, the folks listening to us, the work that I do at the podcast factory, with all the folks, all the business people who are sharing inspiring messages, I know that we can change lives. And there's people who talk about things
Yeah.
and there's people who do things. I'm doing something that I think makes this world a better place.
Yeah. Talk about that. So you're heavily involved in the podcast and business community. Talk about podcasting. Obviously, people are listening to this. They're listening to podcasts. How does podcasting have an opportunity to impact and change? I agree with you, but how does that have an opportunity to change the world? This beautiful media channel that we're on.
How doesn't it? I mean, people are listening to our conversations. And if we are here talking, being honest, sharing, and there's somebody on the other side listening, they can have a breakthrough just by one question you ask, just by
Yeah.
one thought I share, just by one experience or one story. And we've all felt it. I know I have. I'm confident you have, whether you're reading a biography or watching a documentary or listening to a podcast, and somebody says something that changes your perspective. It changes the way that you look at a problem. You are now changed. Your mind is now open to new ideas, and you have a new tool, a new ability, a new awareness to make a change in your life. And the reason I'm here, brother, I didn't graduate high school. I barely got out of there, right? I wasn't supposed to amount to anything, but I started listening to audiobooks, reading,
Mm.
listening to podcasts, watching videos. And each time I got a new piece of information, a new perspective, I grew. And so now we're providing these growth opportunities for everybody listening to our shows.
How did you get into podcasting? I'm always curious because everybody's got some crazy story usually about how they got into it.
Yeah. So I mean, it's going to date me, but I did my first podcast in 2008. And it was
Ooh.
a time when
You were on the forefront of it all.
that's what some people say. Other people say they're old. But the thing is, at that time, blog was a big way to
Yeah.
get your name out there, get people to know you, build an audience. And I've already admitted I was no good at school. So, I'm not going to be writing blogs. That wasn't going to happen. But I was trying to build a business online, and I knew I needed to do something to market, to position myself, to let people know who I am, what I do, how I can help. And I wasn't going to blog. I got my first Mac, and I discovered GarageBand on there, and I started
Yeah.
tinkering with it and figured out how to hook it up to iTunes. And from there, I realized I could create a podcast. And so I was one of my friends who was using podcasting as that platform back in the day. They were all blogging. I was doing podcasting, and I happened to fall into it. It was because I didn't have any other choice.
How has it helped to transform your life? If you've been doing it that long, clearly it's added something to your life.
Sure. I mean, at this point that we're speaking right now, I've likely been a host, co-host, or guest on 2,000 shows.
Wow.
Very close to that. So I've had a hell of a lot of conversations, had a lot of breakthroughs, had a lot of fumbles and mistakes, had a lot of learning and growth. And what the podcasting, I mean, and this is why it's part of my business, is I believe everything I have today I owe to this medium, because I've met amazing people. I've created incredible relationships. I have an entire business where we've launched about, I don't know, 125 podcasts for experts, helping them
Wow.
reach their exact right listeners through this medium. So the life I have today is because of the podcast.
All right. Tell a funny story. What is the craziest thing that's happened to you in 2000 or so episodes?
Oh, the craziest. That's a little unexpected. How do you define crazy?
I don't know how you define crazy. I mean, I've had a couple of funny things happen. I was fairly new to podcasting, and it was I did an interview with a gentleman who at the time, I believe he was in Japan. He sat through the interview in a bathrobe drinking champagne. It was quite an interesting, yeah.
I haven't
That's
had
right.
anything like that.
It was really it was really good though, but to me that was it caught me off guard, and it was just kind of it was just one of those funny things. And I think from time to time, short of the technical challenges that sometimes happen and that are completely out of our control, I just I had that experience. I was just curious if you had a funny situation like that occur.
I don't think that I've ever had. I'm trying to think, like, man, how come I haven't had that experience in all this time? I mean, very recently I had somebody show up eating cereal while talking to me, and I was like, hey, guy, I
Really?
see you eating cereal. This is not going to work. Can we finish our lunch before we get on a call? But I've never had anybody show up with champagne in a bathrobe, and I feel like I'm missing out now.
No. No, I don't think you are. And but the cereal story is actually pretty good because, now I take my podcast, I put the video out on YouTube, and I take the voice, but you can't do a podcast while you're eating food.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. Although now that you mention it, it would be a tempting thing to do. I mean, maybe that would draw people to the YouTube videos. I don't know.
It could. Give it a shot. Test it out.
So listen, let's talk more about these lessons that you have learned by building your brand and being a part of the podcast. And, there are probably guys out there right now, maybe they're entrepreneurs, maybe they're business people. What are some of the major business epiphanies that you've come to as you've been in this podcast movement and helped other entrepreneurs and help business owners to make breakthroughs?
I think that a couple of the lessons I've learned while doing this, I've learned so many ways not to do things, and that's been fun. And I do my best to help
But
my
that's half
clients
the
avoid that.
battle, isn't it?
Sure. I mean, that's what happens. You got to take those arrows in the back when you're a
Yeah.
trailblazer. But I think that some of the mistakes I've made and I've seen people make that makes podcasting not fun or not work for them is number one, trying to do it all yourself. I did that. And that's why I started this company is I remember recording conversations with my buddy, good friend, good mentor. We had a lot of fun when we were on the air together. And that was a great 30 minutes. And then 3.5, 4 hours afterwards of post-production, writing, posting, and all that. I hated it.
Yeah.
And that's why I started building the company that I have now is because I wanted to take that part away from me so I could just do the fun part, which is talking to guys like you. So that's one mistake I've seen. Another one is not really having a purpose or a plan for the actual podcast. And this is a huge mistake people make. They just flick on the record button and talk about whatever. And they think that's a podcast. And I mean, if it works for you, great. But I just don't know how to make that work for me. And so what we've built over the years is something we call direct response podcasting. And it's quite simply a 3-step framework where the first thing we look at is who are we talking to? Who is this show for? Who are we trying to connect and communicate with? That's where it starts. We want to know this show is for somebody. And once we know who that person is, we call that the client cloner because we want to clone our best clients as listeners. Once we know who they are, that's step one. Step three, and this is where everybody misses because they feel like it's selfish or something, is what's this podcast supposed to do for me? What is the purpose? Why am I doing this? Why am I putting in the work? And for most of us, we want to grow our business. And if you don't take that into consideration when you're building the podcast, you're going to miss out on it. So we call this part, step 3, the client matrix. What do you want that listener to do after listening to the show? Listen to more shows, go to my website, book on my calendar, buy my stuff. You got to know what you want that person to do. So we know who we're talking to, step 1. Step 3, we know what we want them to do. That informs the piece in the middle. Step 2, we call it the content vault. And that's how you plan your content. See, people just record shows at random, not knowing anything. But the way that we do it is very strategic. You start knocking out objections, moving that listener one step in front of the other, one show to the next, until they're taking you up on your call to action. And when you have those 3 pieces together, the podcast produces an ROI for you. But the problem is most people don't plan ahead, and they just start recording rather than planning.
Isn't that true of life? So many people don't plan ahead. They don't know their purpose. They don't know their goals. But you, friend, sound like you probably have figured out how to keep that together.
I mean, it's by necessity. I did it all wrong. I did it all wrong over and over again. That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to save our clients some pain, because I remember that one podcast I did, and this was after, so I had the initial pain of, oh, it takes 4 hours to do an episode. I'm hating this. Let me hire people to do all the back end work. And I did another podcast with another buddy. We got about 25 episodes in where I had a writer, I had an audio engineer, and I had a lot of money I was spending, but I hadn't figured out how to get that money back. See, so I was figuring out the pieces as I went along. The third time along, then we thought, so we're going to make money. This is who we're talking to. This is the content we're recording. Boom. $100,000 in that first year, and then it kept growing after that.
So you definitely have your business in order. I could just tell by listening to you, you know what steps to take to run a business. How do you systematically keep your life like that? Do you journal? Do you keep a planner? How do you keep yourself on track?
I had an interesting conversation. My boy's going to be, our boy is going to be 9 years old in a couple weeks. And he asked me, I'm not sure how it came up. He heard the word discipline. And he said, Daddy, discipline sounds like a bad thing. If I'm misbehaving, you discipline me. Is discipline a bad thing? And I bowed up and I'm like, discipline? We live by discipline. Everything you have in this house is because of discipline. Discipline is what makes this all work. And he was surprised. And I said, here, discipline is something that we strive for. And I'm going to say this. I think that we are very disciplined. My wife and myself, we are very disciplined. We run an organized house. And I do think that there are some limitations to this. And so I'm trying to figure that out. But for us, we're regimented in our schedule, in the way we manage our clock, in the way we manage our finances, our faith. Everything is discipline in our house. And so, like I told you, in the morning, I've got my prayer time, meditation, reading. Then it's family time. Then it's fitness time. And then it's work time. And after I'm done working, back to family time and homework. And that just happens every single day like clockwork. My clothes are put out the night before for my workout. So I get up and I jump into my workout clothes first thing in the morning. Everything is structured. We know that. Got to take the kid to school. After school, get the workout. After that, it is work time, and I shrink the work time. So work time for me is only about 11 to 3, and I only work 4 days a week, because Dan Sullivan says that you have to. Dan Sullivan's from Strategic Coach, and he says that we start getting reactive when we work too much. So I got 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 2 days off. So that I'm constantly recharging myself, so my creativity is up when I show up to work. But all of this is in the calendar. I have a weekly game plan. I have a daily game plan. I have a monthly, quarterly review. Everything is like on checklist. It's all written down. Nothing is left to guess. And some people might say that's boring, but I find it thrilling to know what calls I have today, what calls I have tomorrow, when I have off. Yeah. And it makes me feel good.
Mine is a machine here. So I'm curious. how did you get started on that retreat? I mean, what I found a lot of times, and it works for you, but so many times people are the complete polar opposite, and then they're just all over the place. So how did you come up with this routine, or how did that happen for you?
It's a work in progress, man. I'm not saying that
Oh,
it's
I
perfect now.
understand that. I understand.
And I will give you a little secret. With this extreme discipline, like for instance, today I finished my workout a little bit before I got on with you, and I'm approaching 900 consecutive days of 30 minutes or more working out. It didn't just
That's
happen by
awesome.
accident. It happened because I started 90 days. I did the 90 days, and I'm like, I'm going to double that. Now I'm going to go for a year. I did 1 year. I'm going to do two. Well, I can do three. And so it's little baby steps. And I can tell you that this really started back around 2010 when I was out in the jungles of Costa Rica, hanging with some friends and doing some internet marketing stuff. And I got invited to this beautiful resort by the Arenal volcano. And one of the guys, an older guy, talked to me about gratitude. And
Uh-huh.
I didn't think about gratitude at all at that time. And he gave me a very simple exercise. And this exercise has led to most of the big breakthroughs in my life, really leaning into and learning my purpose, and continues to help me grow and be positive and fill my heart with love. And it's simple. He said, grab yourself a pen and paper every morning, every night, write 5 things you're grateful for. That's it. And so that was a start of my journaling habit. That was a start of gratitude. That was a start of me figuring out, oh, here are these things that keep coming up over and over again. These must be important to me. Maybe these are my pillars of purpose. And that's
Yeah.
how I figured out faith, family, finances, fitness are my pillars of purpose, was through that gratitude exercise. And then I had that down. I wanted more. I started trying different journals. My buddy put me onto one journal that I did for a couple years, where you put your goals, you plan your quarter, you do all that. And ever since then, I've just been refining that journaling technique and planning my quarters and measuring against that. And even now in our company, we run the whole company like this. We're running on the entrepreneur's operating system, and we have weekly level 10 meetings with the team. We have quarterly meetings where we plan our objectives and key results. We have scorecards that we report on, and we have a system for eliminating any problems in the business. And it's all that's all on a spreadsheet, but it's all documented. Like I said, everything's written, everything's right there in front of
Yeah.
us.
But if not for that discipline of being able to do that, having those check-ins, where do you feel like your life or your business would be without all that?
I Here's something I don't usually talk about, is that I am very regimented. Like my schedule, my alarm clocks, everything. If you can't tell, it's almost like I'm a military guy. Uh, Even my eating, like I count my macros. I know I'm getting exactly 2,124 calories today. I know what I'm eating for dinner. I know what I ate all day. Like I do this with everything in my life, and eventually it gets exhausting. It gets exhausting, and I'm like, done. I'm not doing the schedule. I'm not doing the eating. I'm not doing anything, and I start to feel like crap. And
Yeah.
in particular, especially running a business, I start to feel like I'm jumping out of an airplane without a parachute. And that's when I go back
Mm.
to the safety of discipline. But every once in a while, I'm like, I've had enough. Let me just, I can't imagine what it would be to run a life where you always feel like you're free falling. I'm scared of that.
Yeah. Well, you can jump out of a moving plane without a parachute, but that's basically the only jump you get.
That's the end. Well, I'm not ready for that.
No, I'm not either. I guess what I'd really like to know, because this has been my problem as of late, how do you stay regimented like that and avoid injury? You don't need to answer that. That's just me, because it's just one injury after the other as of late.
No, you know what? And that's one of the things that I had to look at with the working out at this level of I want to work out every day. I even had a trainer for 6 months and I was pushed very hard to gain muscle, skeletal muscle mass, lose fat. And the trick was, how do you not get injured? And I had to start looking at it in a bigger level, like a marathon, not a sprint. And for
Yeah.
instance, last month, my back was tweaked a little bit. And I decided, well, I'm not going to go lift weights if my back is hurting. So I just did walks for most of the month. And I mean, I felt guilty because I'm like, I really should be lifting weights, but I have to look at it in the picture of 900 days of working out, 30 days of walking is not a big deal. And so I'm able to look
Yeah.
at the bigger picture and say, okay, this is how this fits in here.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. I try to mix it up anymore because it just, you know, just stuff doesn't work like it should, or
Yeah,
I want to,
like it used
right?
to.
Yeah. Yeah. So you got to play other games. Jonathan, really appreciate you being on the podcast today. Tell everybody, where can they find you? How can they listen to your podcast as we begin to wrap up today?
Yeah, absolutely. So Jim Rohn famously said, "You are the average of the
Mm,
5 people you surround yourself with." And sometimes it's hard to find good people to surround yourself with. I get it. I grew up with
yeah.
a bunch of dummies like me. And it was hard to find the right people. And so I'll invite you to surround yourself with better people, better thinking, more motivation at
Yeah.
thepodcastfactory.com. Click on Client Showcase, and there's at least 90 shows on there for you to choose from. Not my show, shows from all our hosts that you can find your flavor and roll with it and elevate your environment, elevate your game. I think that's the biggest one. As far as the podcast goes, it's resultsleader.fm. And you and I had an amazing talk. I can't wait till
Yeah.
that interview airs. But that's where you can find the work I'm doing right now.
Yeah, I would encourage everyone, go check that out. There are some, I went through there, I scrolled through there, and I'm like, wow, what a selection of podcasts that you're working with. So I just thought that was really cool. Jonathan, thanks for being on the show today. It was great meeting up with you again and spending a little time with you.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you, and it was fun.
Yeah, take care.